want the facts? We got it here. It's hot, it's black. Come sit and sip black tea.
Good evening, and welcome to episode 3, entitled Ebony and Ivory, Interracial Relationships and Colorism Dynamics in State College. State College is a progressive city, as we say, but how does it truly treat those who are either in an interracial relationships or identify as biracial? And also, where does colorism play a part in all of this? This might get a little hot, but just sit back while we spill the tea. In 1967, Loving versus Virginia was a landmark achievement in the fight for interracial relationships and marriages in the United States. Now, Americans are with individuals that they love, never second-guessing someone because of the color of their skin. Despite the fact this country has seen a lot of change, I know State College could engage with this topic a little more. You see, I happen to know that Happy Valley isn't too happy these days. From black codes to the one-drop rule, I think we could all get acquainted with those in our community who understand and who have experienced the dynamics of colorism a little better. We spoke to more community members. Some identify as biracial, and most were in interracial relationships. Let's see what they can teach us from their perspective. First, as a mother myself, I wanted to hear from Melanie Morrison, a mother and an activist from Millheim. She has a story worth listening to.
The first thing I remember, beyond just my husband at the time and I being glared at in Walmart or wherever we would be, when I had Maxwell, my oldest, in the front carrier. He was a month, 2 months old, and that was when the comments started, "Oh, where'd you get him?" And people really felt very free and comfortable to ask me a question like that. So, I started to respond in a little bit of a snarky way, let them know physically where I got him from so that maybe they would never ask another person that and maybe think how inappropriate that question is. But when they started school, especially out in Penns Valley, that was when we really started to have issues, and they escalated quickly during the year of 2016. The summer leading up to the election, everything intensified. We've had experiences where a girl called my son in 6th grade, called him a monkey. And the counselor called me, and the first thing she did was explain to me that girl did not understand the racial implications, which clearly from the way it was used, she definitely did know. And also, that wasn't what I wanted nor needed from the counselor. I didn't need her opinion. I needed action. And I've never received it from the school district.
While being in an interracial relationship, can you be A, pro-black, and can you still be racist?
White people like to convince themselves that they're not racist because a lot of them have this like one of the good one mentalities. And I've known a lot of people who have dated black people who still have that. Like they'll say things like, "Oh, well, he acts white." And I'm like, why? Because he's intelligent? Like what, like what do you mean he acts white? How do you not realize how racist that is to say? And I've had to have that conversation with a lot of people, including people who have dated other black people. I mean, I've even had to correct his mom on something that she has said to me. And this is years after being married to a black person. So you absolutely can still be racist because you don't have, there doesn't have to be intent to be racist. Like you don't, there's gray area, like it's not just the KKK is racist and anything less than that isn't, right? There's a lot in between there.
Robert Ziegler, who is a step-parent in a multiracial household. Let's hear what he has to say as he explains what it is like for him to navigate new lessons.
It's difficult for some white people to talk about race issues because they don't want to talk about it because they're not comfortable. I'll be honest, I'm not comfortable talking about it. But the thing is, it's necessary. You have to have open and honest dialogue, and that's how progress gets made. And it also makes it so people can be more aware of it. So, am I aware of the situation? Yeah, I would still be aware of the situations. Would I still call it out? Yeah, I still would call it out. I'm much more, I wouldn't say much more invested, but I'm definitely more aware of how young it starts because of my stepkids. And it's just appalling. I view children as being innocent. And, at ages 8, 10, these situations are occurring that shouldn't be happening to an 8 and 10-year-old. And so, I still would have questioned it, and I still would have looked into it more because that's the type of person I am. My experiences with family definitely make me, I guess, more hyper aware of the potential.
These instances aren't only in State College, but the entire world, and it permeates in the thoughts of the youngest in our society. This video is from the Clark Doll test, which was aimed to prove the harmful ill effects of stereotyping and racial segregation in America. Something I'm sure many of us remember learning at a very young age ourselves.
Can you show me the doll that is the nice doll?
Why do you want that skin color?
Because it looks lighter than this kind, because this looks a lot like that one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I just don't like the way brown looks, because the way brown looks really nasty for some reason, but I don't know what reason. That's all.
So you think it looks nasty?
Well, not really, but sometimes.
Sometimes.
¿Cuál muñeco es malo? ¿Por qué es malo?
I can speak from my own personal experience. Being an African American woman is hard enough in its own right. But when you couple that with the fact that you're darker skinned, it can become extremely challenging. From small microaggressions like, "You're pretty to be dark," as if all darker skinned women are ugly, to implicit biases by assuming I'm angry or was born with an attitude, or beliefs such as darker skinned people are more likely to be uneducated, violent, and criminally inclined. These stereotypes and prejudices are not only outside the Black community, but within them as well. The truth is, Black people are a beautiful people, and we come in many shades, from ebony to ivory. Wait, I know that the Latinx community here has something to say. So we were lucky enough to hear from Maggie Hernandez, who gave us the scoop.
I mean, you have to think about the Latinx community as similar to saying an American from the United States, right? Like Latinx people are an ethnicity that are made up of lots of different diverse groups of individuals, right? You can be indigenous and be Latinx. You can be, of African descent and be Latinx, right? You can be of European descent and be Latinx. And so the fact that there is so much diversity within this grouping that we call Latinx means that there's also, levels of discrimination. The term Latinx comes, is mostly to describe the fact that certain areas of the Americas were colonized by Spain, and therefore these areas speak Spanish. These areas, the slave trade brought people from Africa to the Americas, right? In the same way that they did in the United States, except the people that were in the other countries were speaking Spanish, but it was the same, Indigenous people were also colonized, in these areas, except the language that they were forced to be speaking was Spanish, not English, like we would in the United States, right? And so there is an enormous amount of racism and white supremacy and colorism within the Latinx community. I mean, you see that even in representations of what Latinx people look like on things like on telenovelas, right? On Telemundo, it's mostly white Latinx people that get selected to be in roles. It's mostly white Latinx people that are shown to be the representation, right? Like just today, we had, at the inauguration, Jennifer Lopez went up there and she sang a song. And it's like, why not pick not a white Latinx person? Like, that does not at all show the diversity of Latinx people, And so because Latinx is an ethnicity, I think sometimes people forget that there is an enormous amount of diversity, and also that the structures of white supremacy also operate within the Latinx community, because those are the structures that were present in that came to other countries too when Spanish colonizers took over those lands. And so I think it's important, and part of what I'm doing for my dissertation work is trying to show this diversity, is trying to show that this racism exists both within and outside of the Latinx community.
Do you know what colorism is? Well, our friend Letitia Franklin breaks it down from her perspective and how she's reflected with that idea.
To me, colorism is just that idea that, someone is prettier than someone else based off their skin color, or someone has it easier in life based off their skin color. Lighter is better, darker is scarier, and things like that.
And have you ever experienced colorism, or do you think you have?
I've thought about that often, and I've had a number of conversations with people about it. And of course, there's no way to truly know unless someone admits to it. And I mean, who's really going to admit to
Right.
it? But I've thought about, my success and the fact that, I've been given so many opportunities. And not to say that I was undeserving of those opportunities, but then I also look at people who were just as smart as me, but maybe they didn't want to straighten their hair, or maybe they were darker skinned than I, or maybe they weren't perceived as pretty as I am. And so they didn't get those opportunities.
Non-Ray Knotsberger is a part of the local activism here in State College, and we thought she had such an interesting point of view. It was only right to share it with you all.
So I grew up with people, kids on the street. The Nigerian names for it, Bature, Oyibo. So I would get made fun of on the streets that I'm actually white, but it's actually not a derogatory term. It's just something, you're, white girl. And then coming to United States, of course, you're black, right? Nobody thinks of me as white. Nobody even thinks of me, I think, as light-skinned. I mean, compared to when I went to college in Boston, I was so shocked to see people that were so much more like shades lighter than me, and they didn't ever question that they were black in any way. And so I think, in the United States, it's the one drop rule, one drop of blackness and you're black, and that's fine. I've always identified here with my African American brothers and sisters. I have no problem being, considered black. It's part of the package. But it's an interesting experience, definitely, because I go back and forth between different countries. And in some ways, I would say more of the differences that you feel maybe is the African Americans, and between African Americans and Africans, there's a lot of discontent, a lot of problems, a lot of misunderstanding. And oftentimes that's because of this international versus, national, like citizenship and things like that. But I wouldn't say that my experience of racism is different from any one that's here in the United States. I think that we experience the same things. I think the only difference would be in ourselves, how we respond. So how I respond and how I see things obviously is different, and my own history. So what I face is the same, but my history is different, right? The history of an African American who has been descendant, from enslaved people whose families has been here for hundreds of years is very different from my experience, where my mother's people are African generations back, and so my blood here in the United States is not the same. So how I experience the racism, how I respond to it, how I internalize it, and generationally how that has happened in my family is very different. It's a very different story, right?
I'm so glad that Non-Ray could share with us a different perspective. She definitely gave us a lot to think about. Now, we couldn't end this show without getting a little word from the wise. Charles and Joe Dumas have been together since 1970. They are one of the eldest interracial couples living here in State College. They were recently featured in the February edition of the State College magazine, Love, Love, Love. Let's see what advice they have to give to us young folk.
One of the things is that, as we all know, no one is born a white supremacist. But if we keep working, no one has to die a white supremacist.
And as someone raised as a Euro-American with all the privilege attributed to that my love and my relationship with my husband and our children has been a lifelong commitment to identify, root out, and eliminate white supremacist thoughts, words, and actions from my life.
Actually, you just kind of answered my question. My next question was, if you know, being in an interracial relationship, can you be pro-Black or can you be racist? And the answer is yes.
You don't know how far a generation we are. Our children are having children. How do you feel about being in a mixed couple? And I said, we don't call ourselves a mixed couple. We call ourselves a family. You know,
I loved it. Perfect response.
You know,
we're still learning the struggles that they had growing up. We're still learning it as they approach their 50s.
Yeah, I think that we've also reached the point of being, like I said, we're elders, and we're kind of a lot of what we're doing now is that we consider our role in what's going on in the movement now as being witnesses, as being sort of historical archivists. I was in the movement, and she was in the movement, and we had a commitment that was about something greater than ourselves. It was about the movement. It was about, you know, and so therefore, the stuff that we constantly were put in situations where we were going to be confronting people like that called, you know, the Black Caucus folks. We were always up there in that, so that it wasn't like we sort of went. We did because of the kids. We did try to find places where they would not be harassed as people of color.
We would not have made it from day one to day two had it not been for a mutual recognition among one another of our commitment to be anti-racist and to address white supremacy, our commitment to be non-sexist, anti-sexist, and to address patriarchy, our commitment to dealing with all peoples.
Like Martin Luther King says, you know, I may not get there with you, but I know we're gonna get to the promised land.
September 18, 1858, Abraham Lincoln made his position clear by saying, I quote, "I will say then that I am not, nor have ever been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and Black races." He began going on to say that he opposed Black people having the right to vote, to serve on juries, to hold office, and to intermarry with whites. Nearly a decade later, even as he edited the draft of the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation in August of 1862, Abraham Lincoln argued that it would be, quote, better for both of us, therefore, to be separated. Fast forward almost 140 years later, Alabama was the last state to legalize interracial marriage in the year 2000. You see, that type of hate doesn't just go away overnight. We had the opportunity to sit down with Nick and Jenna. Some of their experiences will leave you speechless.
Yeah, no, these frat boys, you know, couldn't believe that I was lucky enough to be hanging out with a woman like this. And they thought that they were going to white knight and come in and save her. And we got into, you know, an exchange of words. They actually, in the exchange, as they pushed me, her glasses got knocked off into the ground, and one of those kids stepped on it and broke her glasses in the process. And so the cops came, and I'm trying to explain to them that, no, this is my fiance, nothing's going on, these kids are being racist. At that point, I was just a criminal and, you know, a black body in handcuffs. I was told that if I didn't shut my mouth, because I'm obviously trying to argue my way back out of this, if I didn't be quiet, they were going to hit me with other charges, like resisting arrest. And I know what a resisting arrest means. That's code for we're going to kick the shit out of you.
So, I am a Latina, and people don't really realize sometimes that Latinx people are, it's an ethnicity, right? And it's also like when you say Latinx, it encompasses an enormous amount of diverse people, right? You can be black and be Latinx, you can be white and be Latinx, right? And so in the United States, I am racialized as white. And therefore my experiences and the systems that have been set up to uphold white supremacy also uphold me because I am racialized as white, right? Even though I'm an ethnic minority, even though my family, they're immigrants, the fact that they are seen as white people, they are automatically given more privilege than let's say a black Latinx person, right? A black Cuban person, like my family is Cuban. And so on a personal level, the amounts of discrimination that I faced have been, like a few times and very spread out, right? It's not the same as a black person in general, right? A black American, it's not the same as a black Latinx person. However, within State College, I have never seen such blatant forms of racism and white supremacy anywhere else that I have lived.
It's a little tricky though, right? We've had to have some really difficult conversations between ourselves, especially when we first got together, about what racism looks like and how do we, deal with it within our own families, and how do we deal with it within ourselves, and how do we strike that balance between being pro-black and not anti-white, right, within our relationship, because, and how do we strike that balance not only within our relationship, but how do we show other people that too, because there's a lot of what we do, both in our professional lives and personal lives, that's public facing, and so we have to be very mindful of that, unfortunately.
The friend group that I did and growing up the way that I did, I think I still had delusions about how things were going to be. Maybe a little bit more Pollyanna. I'm certainly not as much of an idealist. Now I'm more of a realist. And it hits different when it's you yourself and your friends versus when it's your child. So as far as things go, I think I truly believe that I would still be doing what I'm doing today, regardless of who I had married or my children, but it definitely, I've grown a lot and learned a lot, and I think my hope is that in the future, white women who do have black children will educate themselves more for the sake of their children, because I think that had I not been as much of an idealist when they were younger, I would have been better prepared for all of the stuff that I would be dealing with in regards to advocating for them. A little less shocked about some things. I think I gave people too much credit, and the world showed me that I should not have.
Raised in Central Falls, Rhode Island, Viola Davis has been acting since high school. She majored in theater in college and then went on to attend Juilliard School and graduate in 1994. Davis made her film and Broadway debut in 1996. Although she acted for more than a decade, her first major film breakthrough was in the movie Doubt. Davis' film credits also include Eat, Pray, Love, Fences, and The Help. She also is well known for her role as Annalise Keating in How to Get Away with Murder and Scandal. Davis has been nominated for more than 203 awards and won 102. Throughout her career, she received the Academy Award, an Emmy, and a Tony. She is also the first African American to receive the Triple Crown Award of acting.
Good evening, and we're back with What's the Tea? I am interested to see what type of questions you all have tonight. Dear T, do you have any recommendations for books on Black culture? Where can I start? Well, there are a plethora of books out there. Another Country by James Baldwin, or The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. But my favorite are documentaries called Hidden Colors. There are 4 series produced by Tariq Nasheed. And in these documentaries, there are dignitaries from Francis Cress Welsing to Umar Johnson, just a plethora of people who really dive deep into the African and African American culture and history. And I think that it will be very informational, and I think you'll really enjoy it and definitely be educated once you finish watching it. Dear T, why can't I say the N-word, but Black people can? Well, this is America, honey, and you have freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want, whenever you want, to whoever you want to. But what you don't have is freedom of consequence. So if you so choose, if you feel so emboldened, if you feel so froggy that you need to leap and say the N-word to one of your Black, biracial, Latina counterparts, do not be surprised if you get a twisted T to the face, if you know what I mean. Okay, let's see. Dear T, no question, just want to say, Breonna Taylor. This story really hit home for me because as a Black woman, to know now for certain, I might have known before, but to know now for certain that I could be shot up in my own home and no one be accountable for it, and they're at the wrong house. I'm not a criminal. I haven't done anything. I haven't broken the law, and everyone can go home. It's still sickening. We waited over 6 months for that verdict. That was, quite frankly, bull. And Breonna Taylor was one of those essential workers that we talk about. She was one of those frontline people, and she was just sleeping. And I didn't know that sleeping while Black would ever become a hashtag, but it is one of the most egregious stories of my time, period. And the fact that no one has gone to jail for her murder shows where the country truly is. Whew. Thank you guys for those questions. Those hit a little deep today, but we'll see you next time on What's the Tea?
Living here, which isn't as openly accepting and diverse. I have lived in New York most of my life, and to be living here, I was nervous to, I think, leave the house. I don't think there's a day I go by that I'm riding in my car and thinking about what other people, specifically white people, are thinking when they see me in a nice car or in a nice house or looking put together. Because I think we have this idea that we have to be as put together, as perfect, as shiny and clean as we can so that we don't threaten anyone. We have this mentality of like, I'm one of the good ones, because there are people who, a lot of people don't find Black people valuable or significant. And that is something I've been, I think, dealing with for my entire life, but never, I think the conversation around it now has me thinking about it all the time. I'm in an interracial relationship. My husband is white, and we have intense conversations about it. I am very, as much as my spirit allows me to, from exhaustion from my job, exhaustion just from this whole climate, allows me to be as open and transparent with him about my feelings. So there is, I guess with any group, marginalized or not, there is going to be inner race tension and disagreements and prejudice and discrimination and bullying. So it was the black kids who gave me, specifically the black males who gave me the hardest time, because I didn't dress like them, I didn't spend time with them, I didn't talk like them. I had a very privileged upbringing in all senses, and I wasn't flaunting it, but it was clear that I had huge goals for myself, all the things that I've accomplished, and it just makes me so happy, so happy. It could have easily brought me down, but I didn't have time. I wanted to be a star, and I had goals, and they were not going to stand in my way.
Well, that's our show, Ebony and Ivory. And as you can see, people face all types of discrimination here in State College. Whether they're in an interracial relationship, whether they identify as biracial, and whether they are considered quote unquote light-skinned or a dark-complected individual. In the end, it doesn't matter. People can love who they want to love, and people should treat others the way that they want to be treated. But here in Happy Valley, we've got a lot of work to do.